It's recording. Let me make sure. Alrighty, ready when you are.
Alright. Basically, my level design is kind of not really creative. Like, it's kind of basic. I just wanted it to be mainly inside of a building, like a rundown building, like something you would see in the aftermath of what happened to the world. Basically, you would start at the parking lot outside, which is this little pentagon thing here. You can look around. You have kind of a free option to explore, look at the crates, and see if you can find anything. There's a couple of collectibles hidden behind the cars and stuff like that. The player will then come up to the front gate of the building itself, and he'll find a bunch of crates stacked up and stuff. And that's where we want to introduce like the crouching and the jumping and stuff like that. Just have a prompt on screen. So press this button to jump, press this button to crouch. They can do either one to get over the boxes or under them. The player will then come inside and see just kind of a big open area with a couple of desks and couches turned over and stuff like that, just kind of wrecked in the end of the building. The player chooses to look around. They'll find a couple of places where they can crawl under and see collectibles and stuff like that, which I call heirlooms, trying to fit with the lore of scraps and stuff like that, kind of like extra pieces that they can turn into the, what's his name, I forget. But the main thing is the desk here in the middle. I'm going to try to get like something that illuminates in the middle. It's basically going to be like a code or something like that that later on accesses the control room at the end. If the player doesn't pick that up, then they're basically out of luck when it comes to the code to try to get into the control panel. So I'm trying to make sure that it's illuminated and says, hey, come get this. Another thing, the main mechanic really is the turret systems. I don't know if I'm going to do turrets. I don't know if I want to do like turrets or like some type of alarm or something. But the main thing is I'm going to have it react to the grav null when there can be like a panel on the side that they can try to point and aim to disable it for a certain amount of time. So that way they can sneak past. It's optional to disable it if they think they can get past it without doing so. Basically just a simple layout that goes back and forth. And if they're in front of it at the time, they get caught and have to restart or take damage or whatever. After I introduce that main mechanic, which is this right here, it's kind of an easy one, they'll take this out or get right past it. There's some heirlooms and stuff that they can collect behind it if they do disable it. They'll be greeted with an elevator that will play, that fade in, fade out to the next floor, which is the second floor, which is the last one. They'll see a couple of boxes and overturned supplies and desks and drawers and all that stuff, just like the previous floor, and they can crawl under and get a couple of heirlooms and stuff. I'm trying to implement a way for them to see that, like hiding in plain sight, kind of like make sure they can see them, but they don't know actually how to get there. They have to figure that part out. They'll see a couple more turrets that are going back and forth. I'll probably have like some sort of like a laser pointer that shows which way they're facing and stuff like that if it's dark. But the main idea, and the last turret that they face here, I'm wanting to make it to where they basically, there's not going to be a panel inside. They get caught and then there's a countdown. So they'll count down from 30 or something. They have to figure out a way into the control panel or the control room and then correctly enter the key code and find the right computer to disable all the alarms before the time goes off. And that would be the biggest thing that would be a mix-up. After they do that, they can search around and find a couple of heirlooms and money and stuff. Basically, the money signs are just like breadcrumbs to keep them on track, so that way they know, like if they get lost trying to explore something, remember how to get back to where they were, they can use that currency. But, I mean, in total, it's kind of simplistic. I need to add more unique things to it. It's just a bunch of climbing and boxes and stuff like that. But to close out on it, you'll have like a little cutscene that shows the person on the computer, and then you'll hear over the thing says, "Oh, this is perfect," or something like that, to fade out on basically just him finding a way out of the building.
Okay.
And that's about it, really. That's about as far as I've got.
Alrighty. So anybody have any questions or comments, any concerns for Jacob in this map so far?
Are you gonna put in like a clear player path?
Yeah, it's basically, it's not really a path, I would say. I mean, there's obviously more opening towards the direction they gotta go. I need to add some sort of lining and stuff like that so that the whoever's looking at this can see exactly where the player will be going to get to the next area. But I mean, there's no like linear path, like you can't diverge from it. There's obviously other ways you can go to find things, but in the end, yeah, there's basically a path that they follow.
Yeah, so show that with the primary path, because even if there are spaces in the level that it's open or there's options for the different player to take, you still want to show, okay, if I can control the player and dictate where they're going to go, this is the path I want them to follow. And then you can use the optional path to dictate any other interactions or setups that they have.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did with the currency, just to keep the player on track if they do get sidetracked. But I just need to show that this is the primary path, or you can go this way.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the requirements that you want to make sure you hit for the next one. So yeah, definitely everyone keep in mind as we go through these, there's a lot of similar feedback we're going to give, right? He doesn't have a player path. Everyone should make sure you have a player path on your map with any optional paths labeled. Anybody else have any other comments? There's a lot to talk about here, so no one should just say nothing.
How many minutes do you think your playthrough would be, give or take?
Give or take probably 3.5, 4 on the upper end, just before the implementation of all the different mechanics, because I'm going to have it pan over to the turret or something like that and say, here's the panel on the side that you have to hit. This will disable it for a certain amount of time, and then it'll go back to the character. So there are going to be some pauses in it. So
that means I overscoped on my map by 1,000,000 miles.
I definitely feel this feels closer to the 2-minute mark or maybe under. So you definitely have the opportunity now to design a lot of interactions and shoot for the 4-5 minute range. And that way, when you get to level design, you're like, okay, this is way too much. Now we can chop off a part and still be left with a lot. So definitely make sure that you are hitting the scope, and that might come down to your mechanics. One note that I see from here is that you're missing the description of the mechanic, and in the setups, they feel like they're redundant pieces of the same thing. So pretty much, I think your mechanic is the shiny panel on the turret that you can interact with. But then down here, it's the player must disable the panel. So that's pretty much the same thing. You're just trying to spread it out into 2 different things. So that way,
I probably wrote it and then didn't realize I said the same thing.
Yeah, and I think if you come up with 2 unique mechanics and then spread them out across the whole space of the level, you'll definitely hit that 4-minute or 3 to 4 minute range.
Yeah, and I don't really have any exterior design, like if there's trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, so that brings up a good point. Anybody have a comment about what he just mentioned? He doesn't have any exterior for trees? I'm handing this one to you.
Oh, you're supposed to have some terrain.
Terrain, right? So think about adding terrain to your level and just encapsulating the whole space. From you describing it, does this, from going from note 5 down to, or up to note 7, is this vertical floors? Is this a vertical transition?
No, this 6 right here is an elevator.
So yeah, I'm going up vertically.
Right, yeah.
So is this floor stacked on top of this other one, or are they 2 different buildings?
They would be, well, technically they'd be stacked on top of each other because it's the 2nd floor of the building.
Okay, so if that's the case, right, your elevator would be over here.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I was just showing that that's the transition to.
So try and communicate, and definitely as this comes up with your player path, communicate where the breaks in the path are. So if this is your vertical element, this map over here could be off to the side with the same elevator shape, right? And that will definitely change your layout.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because I designed it left to right again.
Yeah, so again, another note for everyone, right? Make sure your vertical elements are lining up properly. And of course, in 2D, when you build this, your vertical floors will be off to the side.
Right.
But if you drag your floor over the top of the other one, that's how it will actually exist in 3D. So it looks like they're the right size. That's good. Just make sure the vertical elements line up properly.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay.
The other note I have from a design perspective was, I believe, one of the notes down here, you mentioned something about you have to find the computer code.
Yeah.
If you miss it, then you get to the computer code and you're like, crap, I don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing you can think about instead is show the player the problem before you just give them the solution.
Okay.
If they find the code on the ground, they're like, what's this for? And they pick it up and they walk over and now they just interact and the problem solved.
Right.
They don't ever have a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But if you show them the computer and they try and type in and they're like, missing code, right? Then you have to go out and find it and come back. And maybe that'll help you when you actually think about if the elevator comes up, they're standing right here and they can see the computer right away. So think about the layout in that perspective.
I see. Okay.
Anybody else have anything? That's where I'm at right now. The terrain, the player path are definitely the big things.
He's
David?
actually got the picture of the building, and that does have a little terrain around it, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that
Kinda counts,
for the map itself, I don't have any terrain. There's no, like, if there's water or a lake or something.
Yeah, so think about when you finish this setup or you finish this interaction with the computer, the player has to exit your building and walk into your teammates. Unless you're the 5th area or you're the last area and you can have that final cutscene or the final game-ending interaction, then yeah, that would be fine as it is right now. But think about if you're the 3rd area and someone else has to come after you. Even if you just have a base plan, things are blocked out and you have your terrain with showing a pathway, or same thing over here. If you have best case scenario, maybe you want to work with your future teammate to have this car drive from his area to yours and crash into the side of the building. And the player starts right here, but you still need to pay attention to what the player will see.
Okay.
And then if you have any windows or things or architecture in the building, if they look outside, what are they going to see?
Right. Okay.
Anybody else have any comments? Anthony, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would recommend just, well, let's think about this building, right? What building have you ever walked into that is only one room?
Right. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So look at a building layout like a barn or whatever, like that picture is right above it, and look at how the rooms are laid out and try to like make something similar to that, and then pull the path through all the rooms, and you can block off certain ones with your crates and everything. That way it'll have more interactions and it'll feel more realistic.
Okay. Okay.
Same with the parking lot. Have you ever seen a parking lot that's a pentagram?
I just didn't know what shape to use.
Yeah, it's definitely a good point, right? Using any reference. So I just did a quick Google search for warehouse blueprint, and you can see some that you can see some resemblance where you're at, but there's more complexity to it. So what you can do as the level designer is use these as a base point and start to add interactions and creativity and adjust the layout, right? Maybe cut off one of these rooms and add a 45-degree angle, or maybe instead of a flat edge right here, it's a curve, right? A big bay window or something like that to add a little bit more interest. But yeah, using reference is a very, very big help in terms of the architecture side of this.
Okay. Yeah, everything else I saw was pointed out already. That was pretty much it.
Yeah, and definitely go through just the rubric and the main requirements, right? If you're struggling with the overall assignment, if you break it down into those requirements and know all the parts that you need to add, you'll definitely be in good shape.
Oh, I did see one more thing. Your IPM icons need to go with your major mechanics. It seems like you're just have them next to core mechanics, but one of your major mechanics is turrets.
Yeah.
So where you introduce and practice and master with the turret, that will be hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and definitely take the time to update and improve it. If you want to really come up with a second mechanic, today is the day to do so, because if you have to change this once it's already built in 3D, it's going to be a lot more time and just a bigger investment to actually make those changes.
Okay.
Now we can just move shapes around and write text in boxes, and that's going to be your overall design.
Yeah.
So definitely take today to make improvements.
Okay.
Alrighty, so if anyone has any other comments or questions, definitely feel free to leave it right on Jacob's map. And thank you very much for presenting. I know it's not the easiest thing to do, so let's give him a hand.
I do have a question.
What's up?
For the layout on the map itself, would I just take, since it's 2 floors, just lay them side by side like that, like I did on, like when I put it into Unity? Would that be the smartest thing to do? if I'm going to run through it and I'm on the first floor and the elevator's over on the other side of the second floor,
Then,
do I just run around?
yeah, you will basically just walk to
Okay.
here, over to the elevator, just for testing
Okay.
purposes.
I just wanted to make sure before I started on it.
Yep, you're right. All right, Javier jumped the line, so Javier's up next.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, thank God.
Bless Javier's soul. God bless.
All right, well, the levels are backwards because it's in the subway. So we actually start off on the -3rd floor if you're considering, regular street level. You're underground. So the player's going to come up through a manhole cover because he's going to be, we're thinking about a possible like a sewage system underneath the metro. So he starts up here at number 1. And it's all pitch black. He doesn't see anything, so he's going to have to use his flashlight immediately. And then he's going to see like a dim illuminated object. So he's going to approach it, pick it up. He's going to notice it's a fuse, and as soon as he picks it up, there's going to be like a spark. He's going to look up and he's going to see a fuse box, and that's where he's going to be introduced with the mechanic of here's a fuse. Let me put it into the fuse box, and that's going to basically illuminate the level. Just not a lot, but just enough for him to see where everything is. Then he's going to continue down this way, and he's going to see some crates here. He's going to see the subway platform, and he's going to try to jump up to the platform, realize that he can't. So he's going to have to use his grapnel just to move the crate, basically, introducing again that mechanic to him, that core mechanic, and then he's going to jump on top of the crate, go over to the platform. And once on the platform, he's going to have the money. Basically, I use money as a breadcrumb for the player, just because his main objective is to, which is introduced right at the beginning, by the way. The Bast basically told him to retrieve a briefcase from the subway, and it's full of money. So I used the money as the breadcrumbs for him to find this way around the level. Once he's on the platform, he goes over here, following the breadcrumbs, and he realizes there's a platform, like a door platform, in front of the control room, which is over here. And as soon as he picks up that breadcrumb, the door to the control room opens up. So he realizes, oh, okay, so once I step on these platforms, doors open. And once he's in there, he realizes there's another fuse box, but this one's a little bit larger. This one needs 2 fuses. So then he goes back out, looks for fuses. These are all the fuses, by the way. They're placed all over the level. He sees that there's one over here, and there's this huge crack where he can't get past to all these other fuses. So what he needs to do is basically get 2 planks with the grapnel and put it over the crack. Once he has that done, he can grab another fuse and then, light up the control room electricity. And what the control room electricity does is it gives energy to the pantograph, which is basically what holds the subway, what gives power to the subway above it with wire and whatnot. And then it also illuminates 2 cameras in the subway station. One is just a decoy, but the other one is going to be stationary. It's going to project on top of the metro, on top of the actual train. So he's going to be able to see a hatch here that's open. And he's also going to be seeing an illuminated exit sign like that. But it's going to be on the other side of that metro, like on the other side of the train, and he can't get to it because it's on this back wall here. So at least he knows that the exit's over there, and he knows that the hatch is open, so he needs to try to get on top of the train. So again, he sees that, he goes out, he gets a couple of crates. This time he's going to stack 2 crates on top of each other, and then another crate in front of it. He's going to create like a staircase to get on top. Once he's on top, he gets into the train itself, and he needs to find the briefcase, which there's going to be a couple of them, so it's going to be trial and error until he finds it. Once he finds it, he's going to try to get out of the train, and again, there's going to be another fuse system that he has to use. This time it's one's going to be a regular fuse box like the first one he was introduced with, and the other one's going to be a complex one like the control room one. Once he collects all the fuses and gets out of the train, there's going to be another narrative that says, oh, this is the train isn't level, I wonder why, or something like that. And then he's going to have to go over here and realize that it's actually missing a wheel, and that's why it's not really making proper, again, there's going to be sparks from the pantograph, and he's going to notice that it's not connected properly because it's missing a wheel, so he has to do something about that. He's out of the train, he goes over on this side, because, I mean, he's basically explored this whole area. So the next thing that he notices is this elevator over here. So he goes onto the platform, and he notices that this time there's another fuse box, so he needs to get the fuses for the fuse box. But this elevator fuse box is different. It needs a specific way to put the fuses in. So he's going to have to pick up one, put it in, then he's going to put another one in, and it's going to give him an error. So he says, oh, okay, wait, what if I put it over here? And then it's going to click. Like, there's a sequence to it. And he's going to have to figure that out. Once he has that operational, he's going to notice that the platform this time requires more weight than just his body to open up. So he's going to say, okay, let me bring a crate over with me. Let me bring another crate over, and now the elevator door is open. So he goes into the elevator, and then he goes up to the -1st level. And in this one here, he walks out. Now, his whole purpose for the 2nd level, I'm going to add more things to the -1st level, but the whole purpose is to find the components to repair the train. And so over here, he walks out, and there's breadcrumbs all over. Like the first visible one is over here, and there's going to be a dead security guard around this area. This is the entrance from the street to the subway station. So you have your, where you put your ticket to walk into the station, that whole kind of thing going on over here. And he jumps over the debris, and everything's ruined. So, and then he finds the key on the security guard, gets the breadcrumb cache, and then jumps over again, and is looking for components for the train, right? So as he jumps over, he sees the other cache over here, walks over here. Oh, he found one of the objects. We can make it a jack to move up the, crank it up. And then he has to find the wheel, which will be in one of these doors. I mean, it's going to be on this one, which is going to be the maintenance room. And then if he goes in here, I created this little room. It's a bathroom. But what I did for this room is, if this guy has, collected all the cash, as soon as he goes into this room and collects this other, this last, I said 5 out of 6. If he has 5 out of 6 in his inventory of the breadcrumbs, he's going to get a little backstory to what the narrative of the game. If he hasn't gone through the level getting it, he's basically going to be out of luck. He's not going to get that. So it's like a bonus, a reward, right? So yeah, he goes back and he sees a barrel here. He tries to get back into the elevator, and it says malfunctioning, and he can't fix it, so he can't get back down. But he sees a barrel over here, and he sees that the wall over to the stairwell, this is the stairwell that's next, is kind of cracked. So he's like, okay, maybe if I use this barrel and explode against that wall, it'll bring it open. So yeah, he uses the crouch mechanism to get back into the stairwell, goes back down with the crank, with the jack and the wheel, goes over here, repairs, goes back over, repairs the train here. It's making proper connection now. He goes back into the control room. There's a big red button that says like activate or something. He presses it, because I mean, he tried that a couple of times, and the sparks would happen, right? Because he needed to fix the train. So now that the train's working, he presses the button, and there will be like a cinematic that'll basically move. If you could move it just a little bit to the right, yeah, to the left. I'm sorry. Yeah, this over here. So basically, the train will move forward, just this part, because this is basically blocking the player from continuing down this railroad, the railway. So this will move forward, creating this opening. And the mastery part of the mechanic with the platforms is that this time the platform is going to be away from the door. So, and it's going to require weights. He's going to put crates on top and everything, and the door is going to open. But as soon as he leaves the platform, the door closes. So there's no way for him to actually get through the door. So what he needs to figure out is that he needs to put a crate between the door when it's open, to keep it open, basically. And then once that's done, he goes out to the exit, and the exit's basically going to be a stairwell. It's going to be like a maintenance way going up to the surface, and that's the end of the line.
All right. All right, questions, comments?
What's your estimated time to the world?
I don't know. I mean, it's
Pretty long.
yeah, it seems long. It depends on how advanced the player is that scraps, really. I mean, I was overestimating everything. They told me that it's an experienced guy. There's going to be like a level 4, level 5 kind of thing. So he's going to have absolute control of the grabnel, and he's going to know when there's an opening that he needs to put something to get over it. It's not something that he has to think about. But could be very, like, especially the whole repair the train and get the parts on the negative first level. I don't know. I don't know if it's too much.
I think you're okay in terms of time.
Especially if you have a clean transition for each floor, instead of spending 2 minutes trying to get from the first floor to the third floor, every time you have to move an item, just having to wait to get from the third floor to the second.
Yeah. Well, what I wanted to do is something very small and packed, because that way it's easy, it cuts time. I mean, everything's there for the player. He just has to go back and forth and figure out the sequence,
Any other questions? Any other?
You think about adding turrets to the game?
No, I'm not a fan. I don't know.
What was your use of terrain?
There was none. That was a major thing I forgot. So I don't know how to approach that really. Since it's the metro, like it's a subway. So I don't know if like the street access, maybe create like a grayed out template of the city, like a street and put some buildings or something like that. And maybe over here in the exit, create the stairwell going up to like a very like a garden or something.
Yeah, definitely just think about it from if you're working with your teammate and your teammate's like, I don't care, the player exits my level and has to get to yours and I'm on the ground floor, and you can design something that you want or some transition. What do you want to build?
Okay.
I definitely would recommend, it's tricky because you're having them start on the -3 floor.
Yeah.
If you're on -1, there's a little bit more options, but because you're on the very lowest floor, think about, and this kind of ties into transitions as well as terrain. Maybe the player, drops through like an access tunnel or something. Maybe they're walking on the ground floor and then drop down this hole and land in there. Other ways you can use terrain, though, can also be like right on the train tracks. You can have like mounds of sand or debris, or maybe behind the player, if you look to the north, there's like a big pile or a crashed train with sand or dirt or something, just using the terrain like that. Or in spots like here, again, just you can have multiple smaller pieces of terrain, just using them as basically ways to form the player's path. But definitely a good catch about the terrain.
And just have a caved-in wall, where the earth came in.
Yeah, I used these locks here.
Underground or something.
I used the locks just to signify that there's debris. Maybe actually putting debris.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, I would do that as well, because how the map is communicated and how the legend works, you would, by those icons being there, that would mean there should be some solution somewhere to get to.
Oh, okay.
But it's fine. I understand what you're doing with it. It's something you can't get access to, but yeah, just change it to a different shape or different debris icon.
Okay. And I was told through the comments to add more to the negative first level.
So I can see where you get that note in terms of you get to note 10, and now there's like, okay, there are 6 directions the player can take, and I have no idea of telling which one they took. From a design perspective, I don't know which one the player's going to take. So maybe laying it out or putting other pieces of geometry or objects or maybe the terrain to create an actual natural path.
Oh, okay.
So there's two notes I have about the first floor. So once we get up here, right, I need to find specific objects for the train and then go back down to the train, right? So maybe you can come up with a more creative way to actually get to the train once they've completed those objects, right? Right now, once they've obtained those objects. Right now you just have them going through the stairs, which is new. I haven't been to the stairs yet, but I'm just walking down a flight of stairs, right? And I come back to this room, which I've been before, and I come across a gap, which I've already completed. Well, how your levels have laid out, and you've done a good job communicating the same spaces in different areas, you have all this space over here, which is like an optional collectible, right? Optional area. Maybe there's like a hole in the floor or some interaction, and then they fall and then land right over here. So now once I have those pieces, I'm back right by the train. So you've shaved off a bunch of the travel time in your level, as well as got that quote-unquote backtracking by giving them a natural progression. So maybe there's more to this level where you still build that linear path where I go in through here and I do the interactions you want, and then I naturally just come back to this point, right? So maybe the stairs are just not part of the equation at all.
Okay.
Another design element I would definitely encourage you to play with is this room here where Note 9 is. I like the idea of there being a sequence, right, and in order you put the fuses in, but correct me if I'm wrong, are all the 4 fuses just like on the ground or on the desk?
They're going to be hidden. I mean, it's not going to be completely visible to the player. They're going to be objects and debris in the subway station.
So yeah, maybe trying to make each one of those feel a little bit more challenging, or at least 1 or 2 of them, right? Maybe one's high up on a ledge, maybe one's inside of like a cage or something you need to throw an object at and it breaks and falls down. Something a little bit more involved than just on the ground or just the same action.
And is that stated in the notes, or do we have to visually represent that on the map?
I would do it with both.
Okay.
Like I would have a note number next to each one. So maybe you have a crate, you move the crate out of the way. You can do it for dual uses, right? So there's a crate that's hiding a fuse. So you move the crate out of the way and you collect the fuse. But then that crate you also use to move over to a ledge to obtain another fuse. So I would break these down to, I would put in an individual note for which setup was, or just have one note that explains all of them, however you want to do it. If Note 9 is already explaining each one, you could have sub-notes like 9A through D, and then put a little A, B, C, and D next to those if you want. However you want to do it, but in both, the notes and the map. Really the only other area of concern I can see, I don't really have a set answer for you, is this area right here. Just because you can see the player path looks a little chaotic.
Yeah.
So,
should I get rid of the grays? Basically, the light grays were just signifying that he needs to go through all these different routes to get it done. It's not like a secondary, like there is no secondary path except for the breadcrumbs, which lead to the primary.
Yeah, if it's making it, if it's hurting more than it's helping, then yeah, you can remove it and just make it easier to understand. I was also going to suggest maybe playing where this room was located, to where I feel like, you know, it naturally, they breadcrumb and then maybe the room's over here. It might be reworking too much, but maybe also cutting, not going through the space again can help clean up the player path. If you end up over here and then fall down and end up over on this side.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
To naturally come back through here. But maybe you know, adding in terrain or other objects, right, other pieces of debris or other geometry to contain them on this path. And maybe what you can do is have this gap be a little bit larger over here as well, right? Rather than it just being you said there's like a crack in the ground.
Yeah, basically the terrain split.
Yeah, so try and be more specific with the shape of it rather than just a square. Right? It looks like it's just been a perfectly cut.
Oh, I see. Like
try and showcase the size of it, because I was also thinking maybe they could come into this room and then like break out the other side, and then they need to maybe planks over here to get back across. I don't know. There's ways that you can prevent the back and forth in this section.
Okay.
Try and clean that up.
Oh, instead of making the activate button inside the control room, I could just put it on this end, like some.
Yeah, down here or like right along this panel in here. It's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, and it might be good to, like, you know, pull all of your player path off to the side and try and redraw it as simplest as possible, and then add in the geometry around it to support where you want them to go.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Oh, hey, you got something?
Yeah, I got one more thing about this map. So I was one of the people, whoever did the comment on his map for the rough map review. So I was was checking up on the size of the room. I don't know if you see my comments. So I was wondering if
Oh yeah, you told me about the architecture, how it's wider.
yeah, just make sure like they are matching with each other. So
Yeah.
it looks like the room on the right.
Yeah, the negative first room is larger than the negative second. Yeah, well, what I have in mind is this is actually all glass, and it's like a cove, basically. And the train is actually, it's a 2-level. Like there is no, this goes all the way up to -1. So from here, it's glass cove, and it's projecting onto the railroads. The railroads.
So it's overhanging?
Yeah, it's overhanging.
Okay, that's definitely a good thing that you can portray in an overall view, right? If you can make your canvas bigger and just have all of the floors, you don't have to have the icons in the path, but just the shapes and even the color coding of the floors, have them overlapped and overlined with each other.
Okay.
There's an example in the map through the vertical map specifically that shows that, where it shows specifically you'll see the red overhang overlapping with the yellow train, or you'll see the areas aligning like that, and that can help communicate that.
Okay.
Yeah, good thing to point out. Make sure your spaces align with each other and they're the proper shapes that you want them to be. All right. All right, Marcus, do you want to go next, or do you want Michael to go? I know you've been waiting. All right, Michael, I'm going to move you down here.
I really wish you didn't go before me, because now your expectations are so high. We're going back to the basics, people. Can I have a laser pointer? Is this it?
Yeah, that's it.
How do you work it? Is it just
click the middle button? Yep.
Oh, okay. Let's go. Cool. Okay. It's a part cut off. There we go. Or can you scroll on? Can you scroll on cue?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll scroll. Okay. So. What's good? I'm Marcus. This is my level when it's dark out, and it's a forest, and it's like basically it's like this old rich white dude, and he has like his forest, his garden, and it's like it used to be like live, like kind of like Great Gatsby, just all this forest and garden, and now it's like dead, and you want to go inside his mansion and take what treasures he has left. And you have to get through this maze of a forest to get there. And so you start over here, and basically you have to collect these clues around the entire forest in order to get the key that leads to the mansion, because he was old and crazy. So you have your first clue here, and then once you pick it up, you have a timer. And this is basically going to like help the player realize that, not realize, but like it's going to like push the player to like try to solve these clues as fast as he can. And if he can't solve and get to the next clue in a certain amount of time, he respawns back to where he was, and he has to keep doing it over and over until he figures it out. But it won't be that hard, trust. Like these clues are going to like have like a music around them. So like when you get closer, you start hearing like a ooh. That's my idea. So like, and they're like little like, what's his name? Riddler, like Batman clues. Like they're super easy. They're like, think of Batman. And so you have this clue, and basically it's like, go across the way above the water to find your next clue, and then basically leads the player to this bridge area. But the bridge, there's a hole in the bridge, and the player has to, find a way to get across it. So he uses like the grapnel, and he gets the crate and he puts it in the middle of the bridge. Maybe not a crate, but like a rock. He puts it in like the middle of the bridge so he can like walk across it. And then, he gets the next clue, and then the timer starts again. And now it's like, not everything was in eyesight. Sometimes you have to look above to see what you want. And then he has to go in this forest and then find the clue and realize that this one is up in the sky. So he has to go around the map and get crates. Scroll to the side, please. So you can see all the crates. There we go. Basically, like, get like crates so he can like grab Nolan and stack them on top of each other so he can get to the next clue. And then what this is going to do is when he moves this crate, he's going to notice that there's a hole there. And it's like, oh, why is there a hole there? But he's not focused on it because he's still on the timer to get this one. And this clue will lead the players like, sometimes through the cracks, there's more than what meets the eye. Like, they're really cheesy like that. It's hilarious. Anyway. And so basically the player has to go through this hole, and it's like a little like cave, like a little wall. Like there's a separate way to get here, but that's like blocked off. You can only see it. It's like a Call of Duty map. You can see there's more to it, but you can't go over there. And he goes through here, and it's like this old timey car, and he has to go through, he has to find a way to get to the clue behind here. It's like behind these two hidden crates. You know, like in Pokemon, where it's like, there's this little tiny tree that's blocking your way, and you're like, I can totally jump that tree, but you have to teach your Pokemon cut before it gets there. It's just like that, BS. Like, just like that. Just to annoy you, you know what I'm saying? So to use like the graphical and the creative way to get to the clue, you have to realize it's behind the car first. And then the next clue will be like, you're almost there, and then, can you scroll down? Yeah. And it's like you're almost there, and then it's like you have to go all the way over here just to find a clue that's like really easy. It's like on the floor, like it's just like a butler's like right there. Not a real butler, but he's like right there handing you the clue. And now it's like you have to go back to where you came from to know where you're going. So now I'm just being like a total D-word to the player. So he has to run all the way back. Can we scroll to the beginning, please?
Mm-hmm.
He's racing against the clock, by the way. So every time he gets a clue, the timer's resetting, or he'll go back to where the previous clue was. It's a race against the entire clock to get just back here to where he started. Like it was always right there the entire time. And he said, get the key, and run all the way back to the beginning against the clock. And I want to implement a way to have like all the things reset to where when he gets back here, like that crate in the bridge, no longer there. So he has to go and to put the crate back. Or like these crates are now blocking this way, and then he has to like move these crates, and then he has to go all the way back to the mansion, and then dun 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 Mario sound, like he saved Princess Peach, but he didn't. He just got a treasure chest. And that's it. That's when it starts out. Comments, concerns, questions?
So you said the level was like actually timed out? Like you have like a maximum amount of time?
Yeah, maximum amount of time.
Alright, so how long on average is your time, and how long are you letting them like max? Like how long over are you giving them?
Since the clues are really kind of cheesy and they make sense, and like I said, the clues will like have music playing so you're near them, so it's not like you're like, oh, where's the clue? It's like I want it to be like if you're on top of it, it should take you 4 minutes. But if you're just like hopeless, it will take you, I say, 20 minutes. Just because you will get reset and then it's just tedious. Stefan?
When you said 20 minutes just now, does that include game overs?
Yeah. So like, they'll try to get to like this bridge and then like, oh, I don't know where the crate. You know, there's obviously a crate over here. There'll be like several. And then it's like, well, I don't know where the crate is. And then they just get reset and they have to keep going around to find the crate so they can put it in the middle of the bridge so they can get across.
Well, what I want to know is what is the maximum amount of time you have?
In one run. Like how long is the maximum amount of time you can take in one run before you're forced to restart?
4 minutes.
4 minutes?
4 minutes.
But that's exactly how long you said that, you know, somebody who's good at it should complete it.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But
Wait, what are you asking me?
you're basically saying there's literally no time for error.
Exactly. I made it work. It should be like easy enough. Like these clues are like really cheesy. It's just going like through the motions. If you're like, if you can just get it. But obviously, if you don't get it, it will take you some time. But it won't take you like, you won't be there for hours.
But shouldn't it at least be like 5 minutes as your time limit? Or 30?
I mean, it could. I plan for it to be short, but this is the rough draft. It could be longer.
I know, but I'm just saying.
Could be longer. This is
Just keep in mind that whoever you have playing that's going to be a good player should finish it before 4 minutes, and then your average player, like somebody just new to the game, should be able to finish it roughly 4 minutes. So at least leave enough time for good players to, aim for something. You can give them an extra item that just says congratulations if they made it before like 2 minutes or something. So you can give them something to reach for, but you can also have like an average time that gives regular players so that way it fits within the constraints.
And also you should make it so where it is still possible to beat on your first try. Possible. Don't say it's easy.
Yeah.
If it's popsicle, it's possible. I got you.
Well, it should be possible.
Yeah, I'll make it possible.
Anthony?
Alright. So, right now you have like little sections of the forest. Actually combine all these things. Show how the path to get from the middle section right here down to the bottom, you just have an arrow. What does that path actually look like? Right? So connect all of those. Right? Your lake isn't going to just be a square. It's going to look like a lake, right? A pond. So show that shape. It should just build this whole area out. And then your trees are very much grid locked right now. Use those trees to make a player path. Don't just have them all on the side like this open space is for you. Go run, right? Use the trees to cut off the player's path, to lead the player to certain locations. And then I would also suggest including some architecture in there, right? Because if it's all foliage, it's gonna become it's gonna all look the same. But then it's also, you can bring down frame rate with a lot of foliage depending on how you put it in there, right? So put in some architecture and break up the trees, and it'll give it a more natural feel as well.
That's a good idea.
And build out the architecture of your bridge. Don't leave that an arrow. Your timer mechanic. It's okay. I like it. It's fine. But I hate just a timer popping up on the screen and say, go to point B, right? Why? Scraps is a real world game, right? Something needs to be pushing me through. What is timing me? Did I accidentally start a fire and it's burning through the forest, and now I have to beat that fucking fire out of here and get to the bridge, right? Something like that. Don't just be like, you have 30 seconds to get to point A. If you don't get there, you're going to die because of no reason. So think of why they're being reset, and then build that out as sure you can, instead of just saying timer, right? Your fire can grow. That is technically a timer, right? It's pushing you through, something along those lines. Other than that, I liked most of it. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, so I think as far as the timer mechanic goes, and having the player get through the level and then having to go all the way to the back, all the way to the beginning, then all the way to the end, you're pretty much trying to make 3 levels. So you're tripling the work for yourself when you can just have one clean experience that they come through, or maybe even get through and then come back to the beginning, right? But remember that example that I chose with like sleeping dogs or games where the way back is completely different. There's things I can't interact with on the way there that I can now interact with on the way back. That's the type of thing that they'd want to see in level design, which again is just really setting your level of work high for the next month. So just keep that in mind, right? By having them go 3 times through the level, what is the player getting out of that, and how much more work do you have to do because of that experience you're trying to achieve? So what I'd like to see you do is have one good solid run through, and that's well designed and well thought out, and then add in anything else where they have to go back through. But just keep in mind how much you're trying to tackle with that. I definitely like the comment about adding some architecture, maybe a building or some structure in here. Agree with definitely with the arrows. It still feels like there's elements of a flow chart where these are the interactive spaces that events take place, and in between they're not really fleshed out. So yeah, draw in a shape using the curve tool for your lake, and then surround the lake with the forest and with the geometry. So you can feel free to make your canvas larger. You can click down here and make it bigger to give you more space to try and think about the overall boundaries of the level. So this is where your player is going to transition, right? But along the edges here and along these spaces, if the player looks out, you don't want them to just see nothingness. So try and think of using the terrain or using the overall forest and the area to create those natural boundaries. And your second mechanic, the player has to solve each clue and puzzle in order to progress. Right? So in there, those notes are very vague, right? To where it doesn't specifically say what are the interactions or what is the mechanic that the player is being taught. So try and be detailed with those. Another thing that I see that is missing just from the rubric or from the requirements, make sure you're using the note numbers.
Okay.
So where you have your notes, you have 1 through 11, and as you were presenting, it sounded like in your head there was a lot more interactions. So one thing that everyone can do if you have time is at least just record yourself presenting your map or record yourself walking through the steps, and then see if your written notes actually match up with what you just said. Right? So everything that you just presented to us and communicated, you would want written out in the notes themselves with note numbers along the path. So those numbers line up with the interactions on the map itself. So yeah, the big things I want to see you work on before the final are definitely like the boundaries, so the player can't see and get out of world, and then the overall architecture of the level and the layout, right? So replacing this with an overall bridge or replacing this with a pathway. Remember, keep it from a top-down perspective. It doesn't need to be insanely detailed, right? You don't have to lay out the bridge with the wires running to it and cars on the bridge and lights and things like that. But you want to focus on the major shapes and the overall scale and proportion, right? So if you are making a bridge that's like, I'm imagining something like the Golden Gate Bridge or something allowing for vehicles travel on it, make sure it's wide enough that the car can actually fit on the bridge, right? So depending on if it's just a smaller walking bridge, then your scale seems fine as is, but just keep that scale in mind as you're putting together all the architecture. And yeah, other than that, everyone else has already covered a lot of the notes that I mentioned. Anthony had a lot of great feedback. So continue to work on it and improve it before the final.
Yeah.
Any other last comments or questions for Marcus? All right, well, if not, let's go ahead and move on. Let's give Marcus a hand. Yeah, and if any online folks have any questions or comments, you can feel free to leave them right on the maps themselves. I know some of you have been posting some messages. All right, Michael is up next, and then we have Roy from the online section. So yeah, if any other online students want to present their map, you definitely have the opportunity to do so today. So feel free to sign up in that sheet. Let me go ahead and paste it one more time in case anyone came in late. If you want to use this laser point marker, it's right here for you. You don't have to, but.
Hello. This is my level. By the factories, the player starts outside of the desert. Yes, he has to find a special component that the bastions need, and it's right at the end of this room. The player has the option to find a secret file from the past about the factory before the world got messed up, and the player enters the room in the abandoned factory, and he looks around the area. See that the path he's trying to get to the generator room is blocked, and is introduced to a crafting table. So the player can craft things like noise makers to distract turrets and Molotovs to set fire to the explosive barrels. He can like move the explosive barrels to here, craft that Molotov, blow it up, and get to the next to the generator room, and can come back here. It can come back in to get another barrel just in case. So in the generator room, the player's path is blocked. he needs to get to the basement, and it's locked. The door's locked, and it's powered up by a generator. But the room to the generator room is locked, so he has to like he has to go to the circuit, climb to the ladder to the circuit breaker here, to the circuit breaker to shut it off manually, and once it's shut off, he can go into the basement. The player has the option to find the collectibles here, and the air vent, and he can go inside these are the holes. That's the air vent, which this one introduces like crawling, and then this one he can like blow a hole into a weak wall and get the collectible also if the player finds it. Anyway, and after the player goes inside the basement, the stairs is like destroyed, and the stairs is like destroyed, so he can't like climb back up. And the players in the basement, there's like a bunch of turrets here. And the player can like go to another second mechanic he can go to is a terminal to shut down the turrets. To shut down the turrets. To shut down the turrets and enter the electrified room. To get past this room, the player has to use the boxes that's floating in the water to make a path for himself. To get out of there. Can you move it up? In the turret defense room, where the player has to get the component, the player has to use the boxes to block out the turrets fire at him to get to another terminal to shut down all the turrets and to get the component. After that, the player can blow a hole into the sewer out here and out to the safe, and that's it. Any questions?
Alright, I'll go. So your terrain is just squares right now?
Yeah.
I would actually like make it look like you want the terrain that's gonna appear there. So maybe some curve, or if it's got rocks are edged around it, make it look like, what is it? What is the outside right now?
The outside is the
desert?
Yeah, it's the desert.
Right, so it's going to be a bunch of sand, right? So show the actual piles of sand around this building, and I would say around the entire building.
Yeah.
Unless you know for a fact that they can only see the front of the building and never the backside, right? So your actual squares that say desert, I would draw out the sand piles. For your crafting, can I craft anything just by walking up to that table, or do I need to collect materials before I get there?
You have to collect materials that are around the.
So show that, right? Show where these materials are going to be in the world, the path I have to take to get each of the pieces of whatever it was, a Molotov cocktail. So the pieces I need to make the Molotov cocktail. Show the path going to all of those, and then to the crafting table, and then I can make my Molotov cocktail, right? So right now you're just showing me walking in the door, I go straight to the table, and I get a Molotov cocktail right off the bat, right? And I need to collect those materials first. The brown in the yellow ground. Can I walk on those? Is there anything special about those?
Which one?
The two different colored grounds than everything else.
I'm sorry, this one or this?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, you can walk on it. That's just the ground.
Are they?
So there's nothing different about this ground.
No.
Are they different color to represent different heights? Is that why you changed them different colors? Because I know this is
they're to like represent different
different floor levels.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right.
Is that it? What you're looking for?
I was just making sure there wasn't anything special that I wasn't that wasn't communicated, right? But if it's just height, that's fine. Your water room. Are those crates just floating in water, and if I try to jump on them, my force pushes them around?
Yeah, you can make a path. You can make a path for them, and once the player can jump on, you can jump on them and like walk.
Right, but if they're moving in water, and I try to jump on the object and it shifts away and I fall off, am I just going to die? Because that setup right now might be fairly impossible.
I think.
Right, because if I try to jump on a box and that means I'm adding force to that box whenever I touch it. It's going to shift away. It's going to float away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to fall off. And there's no guarantee that I'm going to land perfectly on it to where I don't get thrown off. And if all those boxes floated to the edge of the room, how do I solve your puzzle? Floated to the far edge and I'm just stuck standing there, right? How do I solve your puzzle? So think of ways you can supply the boxes, the ways that you can secure them, so whenever I place the box, it will never move, right? I have a guaranteed path to get through your room. That's how I just fix that setup.
Or get rid of the boxes and have a crane or something that you could push a button and it goes down.
Moves a platform or something.
There's a ton of different solutions that you can
get that in the water.
Yeah, it could be so rather than stringing 3 or 4 boxes together, maybe they're smaller, like maybe over here or somewhere you have a solid platform like you do here, and there's just one box you need to place or one object you have to insert to platform across. But definitely think about ways to make that room easier to experience, be an easier experience, as well as adding in different things like a crane or other platforms.
Okay.
And that was pretty much it. Your first room where I have to explode whatever's blocking the door with the barrel and the Molotov cocktail, I'll make those locks. That way I know, as just looking at the map, I know I can't just walk up to that object with grapple and move it out of the way and just ignore the setup, right? So let me know that those are locks and I have to do something special to get past them. Okay. That's it for what I got.
So a few things that we definitely talked about this last class, Michael, a few things that I'll point out again because it's relevant to a lot of the maps as we go through, is be careful out you have, notice how all of the interesting things are along the edges of the room. And then the middle is empty without much going on. So the path is going through here, but there's no gameplay or no focal point in the middle of the room. So maybe instead of your crafting table being over here on the right, it's right when you walk in the room, there's this crafting station right in the middle. Right, it's the main focal point of the room, and then you can adventure off to different spaces. Also, when we talked about your stairs not lining up, make sure those are aligning properly when you go from floor to floor. Right, remember, we said that the stairs would be over here. Mm-hmm. Remember talking about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something you want to change. And then also in here, we have long stretches of the player just walking and not doing anything. So keep in mind your note numbers and the spacing between them to make sure there aren't long stretches of the player walking or doing nothing or crouching. Right, you want to break it up with gameplay elements or just decrease the distance in that space. All right? So yeah, keep working on that, and then we will take a look at it in lab if you want to and give any more feedback. All right? All right, everyone, let's give Michael a hand. All right, I know Roy's been waiting for a while, so let's get to him, and then Pablo, you will be up after that. So Roy, are you ready to present? You want to go ahead and turn your mic on? Let's see if it works. Should be able to hear you in the classroom.
Yeah, can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Hey.
So, Roy, what I'll do is I'll have my map I'll have my screen showing your map. If you want to select or go to your map and actually start selecting icons and things, we should be able to see them being updated, or we should be able to see you selecting items as you go forward. And I can do my best to point with the mouse. But
all right, very
feel
cool.
free to walk us through your path as you go from there.
Yeah, so I mean, as presumed in already, you see the player start is, it pretty much starts outside, kind of like in the woodsy area, and you're like approaching a building in front of you. It's an abandoned office building. The main objective, as you get a little bit closer, the narrative trigger tells you that your main objective is to get to a computer to collect some data for a bat that has hired you to do so. Now, a building, you can't really go around it. The terrain kind of prevents you from doing so. The forests and the bushes and stuff, they start to block you off at its corner. So you can explore the outside area if you choose to, but you're still getting funneled to that entryway. Now, as you approach that entryway, where the one note is, a narrative trigger is engaged. It'll just probably be like a little like pep talk to yourself, just kind of like talking about the building, the environment. You see there's a little growth of terrain in the corners of the building, just kind of embellishing the idea that this building is being like, consumed by the environment from its old age and due to the, post-apocalyptic atmosphere that Scraps is in. So as you navigate a little bit further, there's optional paths, little knickknacks, like hidden treasures in the corners there behind some rubble, some like little office chairs that kind of like framed out as like willows and rectangles. So you can explore those little areas, find little hidden treasures, and you're rewarded by exploring these rooms. So as you approach note number 3, there's these little clumps of debris that are removable with the grav null, and then you can crawl through this little space to navigate into the next room. Now, the room where note number 4 is a pretty important part of the game because it tells you a lot of things. It introduces, number 1, the tripwire that is automatically triggered the second you crawl through that crawl space. And then the machine gun, the turret that's right in front of you, it engages and the audible sound effect turns on as if to fire at you but malfunctions and doesn't. So then you have that little cue saying, oh wow, I got to watch out for these tripwires and not get blown away. So then that introduces the tripwire turret mechanic, and also as you're navigating through this dark room, the player also finds out that the power needs to be restored, especially if they're looking for a computer. They need to reach either the utility room or some type of closet to restore power to the building. So as they're going through this room, there's a little hole entering a basement area that they can jump through, and there's a little breadcrumb at the bottom. So if the player is looking, they will see this collectible item indicating, hey, I can jump down into this area and proceed further. So as they jump down, it's pretty dark, not pitch black, but they will need to utilize their flashlight, and there may be a narrative cue to do so. And as they're progressing through the basement to note number 6, they're in the middle of this basement. There's pillars. There's more debris. It's very murky and dark and atmospheric. There's optional paths between 7 and 9, being just another hidden treasure. If you move debris, you can crawl through this area and find another hidden item at number 7. And number 9 is another optional path. If you move the debris, you get this whole area between note number 12, which is very dark, but it's mainly suited to kind of open up the building a bit because it is a very linear level. I thought that adding this area, it kind of like gives that immersion, gives some more collectibles to reward players that are curious about the level. They kind of explore a bit, move around a bit, get a feel for the scraps world. But back to number 8, or even if they choose to go from 12 to this other room, there's 2 entryways, as you can see, to this next room. And if they choose to go through the optional way, they'll still get funneled to this area, as opposed to also going to note number 8 and removing that debris to go through that doorway. Now, when they're in this next room where note number 10 is, there's multiple tripwires and there's multiple in this area. So the player already knows what this means. They'll have to avoid these tripwires, jumping over them in a timely manner to make sure that they're not going to trigger turrets. The turrets are only triggered if the player is on the tripwire. Otherwise, if they step off the tripwire, they're not going to be getting shot at, so they just have to be mindful of that. So at the far end of the room, number 11 is the utility box is, and then they can flip a lever to turn on the lights. And now this will bring in a little bit more of illumination in the basement area, especially in that optional room that they were in. They can further explore that if they want to backtrack. But if they progress to number 13, this is where there's a staircase, and it introduces a pressure plate, as well as a lock at the top of the staircase. Now this is a little interesting, and I've been playing around with this idea a bit. What my goal is have that breadcrumb, which is noted number 10, to kind of influence the player, saying, I can make it up these staircases, I have to figure out how. So they notice 2 crates that are hidden by debris, so they can remove the debris to collect those crates to build a little stairway to get up to to this platform to collect this bread. So great, they made it to the top of the staircase. They make their way to the door, which is locked. Why is this locked? What do I need to do? If they explore the area, they'll notice this pressure plate, which is new. So then they have to think, all right, well, this pressure plate unlocks the door. There'll be a narrative trigger for this to explain to the player that one hopefully incorporates the other, and that they'll have to collect one of the 2 crates to build their path to the staircase and drop it onto the pressure plate and unlock the door. So a little interactivity there. It might be a little too challenging as an introduction for the player, but any ideas you guys have on that, definitely let me know. As they unlock with the pressure plate, they proceed to number 15. There's more pressure plates in here to kind of, practice this mechanic. There's crates. They put them on the pressure plates and unlocks both doors. If they keep a crate on both of these pressure plates, this little cubby at number 16 will unlock, allowing the player to crawl in and get another collectible. And then after the door is unlocked from those pressure plates, they go to number 17. In the center of this room, it's a little bit larger, a little bit more opened up. This is where the featured asset is. This is the computer that they came here for. If they approach the computer, a narrative trigger indicates that they need now decryption keys, 2 of them, to be able to retrieve this data from the computer for the best and completing the objective. In the note for number 20 is that door is actually unlocked. It's actually locked. I didn't include a locking icon for it yet, but I will. That is the exit way. They can't get there yet until they retrieve the data off the computer. So going from 17 to 18 or 19, they can choose to go to either one of these 2 challenges to collect these 2 decryption keys. Number 18 is a library, which is a very open space. They'll notice a little logo on the floor here, which is a clue to what will help solve the puzzle in number 19. It's going to be very elaborate. It's going to be very noticeable. It's going to be just like a logo of what the building or the office name was, something like that. To kind of tie in a little content there. So with the crates that are in these 2 corners of the room here, they can use that to collect the breadcrumb that they'll notice atop this little handrail area where the pathway wraps around the bookcases, which will then give a little narrative cue to that logo on the floor or something, and then they'll notice the little collectible decryption key around the bend of the bookcase there. So after they collect a decryption key, they can go back, explore the other room, number 19, where pressure plates are, and you notice the little L shape which is there. It's also mimicking the L shape that's on the alleged logo design there to kind of give that nonverbal cue to the player that, hey, maybe if I put all these boxes on these pressure plates, and the other 2 next to them are also pressure plates, the little gray icons. So all 6 of those are pressure plates, but only these 4 with crates on them will unlock the vault that's at the bottom, thus mastering this mechanic and allowing them to proceed to another mastery, which is the 2 turrets and the 4 tripwires, which are a little bit closer together now, giving a little bit more of a challenge. And if they make their way across to collect that decryption key, they can make it back and navigate their way all the way back to the computer, and then completing the level. And completing the level, they pretty much just hear an audible click for the door. Maybe something more clever can come up as opposed to just unlocking a door because you completed the mission. But they can exit that door, go upstairs. There's little collectibles here and there too if they also explore, and that'll just bring them down. They'll bring them upstairs to the roof and to an outside escape way on the side of the building there, ending the level.
All right.
That's it.
Very well said. Anyone have any comments? comment was, "What are you doing here? Why don't you get a job already?" Anyone else have any comments on the design, the layout? No? There's a few things I mentioned. Definitely very, very strong in all of these aspects, from notes to the design to the layout. So real quickly, just so I understand, your tripwires and your turret. So when I run into a tripwire, functionally you want it to go away and be destroyed, right? And that activates the turret?
Well, actually, it's kind of it may be a little off the path of what, was expected to be a quote-unquote tripwire. What I was thinking is more of like an infrared type of line that kind of is going across the floor or against the wall. If they cross or if they're inside that like trigger zone, the turrets are going to fire at you, for being in that area.
Do the turrets only fire at you while you're in the line of the tripwire?
Yes, like infrared sensors in a way. Like if you're activating like a security system because you crossed the line or you're in that path of the infrared, laser.
But they stop shooting whenever I get out of the tripwire, right?
You got it, yeah.
So what if I just sprint through all of them real quick?
That is, that's the other thing too. That's actually a good question. Now the turrets can, I think if they shoot fast enough, if you are doing that, and especially like if you look at this first room at note number 10, they're spread out so far that if you get shot at the entire time throughout your entire, your entire sprint there, number one, your health is going to get very, very low. So I think from a player standpoint, your survivability is going to be gradually decreased. So I don't know if you would do that. And if you notice, there's no health packs on this level yet. I could incorporate some, and especially since you brought that up, I may, if someone does, take more of an aggressive route and sprint through those sensors as opposed to just, maybe strategically maneuvering through them. But that's definitely something to consider. So, yeah, I mean, you can get fired upon pretty quickly, I think, with these turrets. It really depends on how much life they take away,
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely be open to, when you implement that in level design, be open to adjusting the original design just based on how it's turning out and how the gameplay actually is. Is it enjoyable and fun? So maybe you want to readjust it to where if you run into one of the lasers, it activates the turret for 5 seconds. It really depends on how the turret's doing damage, because if you're just having it, if I run into the tripwire and now I take damage from basically the turret, right? It's pretty much the laser is doing the damage, but instead from your original design when you presented it, I was under the impression that the turret the tripwire is just activating the turret, and now the player can actually avoid the gunfire or avoid the bullets from the turret itself. But from what I'm understanding is it's more of this turns it on and it just causes the turret to shoot you, and you can't really avoid getting shot at that point.
Yeah, correct. That's kind of like the design intent that I had initially with that.
Yeah, so just be flexible to when you're actually implementing this, and when you go forward and you have those functioning turrets, what is actually fun and enjoyable. And maybe one thing you can do as well, if there's these 4 tripwires right here and 2 of them activate this one and 2 of them activate this one, maybe there's a way for you to signify that. Maybe the turret has like a blue trim around it, and then those tripwires are blue, or maybe there's a conduit or a line or a wire running from the tripwire to the turret itself, so little things like that can help with the communication.
Gotcha. Cool.
I had one thing about this little area down here where you have these collectibles that are optional for the player. One thing maybe you can do, if there's a way, I know this is the basement and this is the first floor, maybe you could have like a hole broken in the floor or something to where when the player gets this collectible, they can see this other one. They can't get to it, but they can see it. Maybe there's like part of the floor with like a grate or a vent or something that they can't break through it. And then maybe when they actually obtained this item, maybe there's like a one-way ladder that allows them to climb back up here and then progress back through where they naturally were, rather than just picking it up and turning around and going back. So a little way like that to foreshadow and let the player know, hey, there's this collectible over here, so when you're down below, you can search and adventure for it, and then as well as allow them to progress naturally once they do obtain it.
Yeah, like the player into the area, give them some incentive or at least a heads up. So, okay, you can get stuff here.
Yeah, definitely. I really like what you've done with your icons as well. Like I know these are the ones that you've created yourself, but you did a great job of matching our color scheme and adding color to them to make them fit in with the legend itself. So definitely, as you guys are adding your own icons, try and add some color. I think, Javier, you had some ones that are still black and white. Not a big deal, right? But try and get them to match with the overall scheme of the Scraps legend. All right, the other note that I have in here for you is note 18 with your computer. This seems to be, this is your featured asset. You want it to really grab attention to it. So is there a situation, and correct me if I'm wrong, can I walk into this room and not go to the computer, say walk right down here to this room or walk over right here to these pressure plates?
Yeah, you can.
So just keep that in mind, right? Just by the layout of the room, when I walk in here, right, the player's camera is going to be facing this direction. So naturally, players might walk this direction. So a few different ways you can address that, right? You can put geometry or obstacles that lead the player and force them to go to the computer, or you can just change where the computer is located. Maybe the computer is the main focal point of the room, and there's, the supporting, structures and couches and objects around the edges. But the main featured asset's the center, right? Just keep that in mind. Is you want players to know, hey, this is your goal. This is the thing you need to interact with. Maybe even force an interaction with this to open up one of these areas. But just something to consider. You can come up with a solution on your own. And then the last two things I've got is in this area down here, this feels very, very tight to actually maneuver through. Keep in mind your player start icon, where is it? Right down here. This is your actual size of the player. So if you're having trouble, if the player icon can't fit in between these tripwires, you're going to have a hard time actually fitting the 3D character in between there. So bring this into Unity if you haven't. I encourage everyone in the room today. I want to see in lab that if you're not working on your map, if you think you're finished, bring it into Unity and run around and actually test it. You'll be able to get a full visual of what your map's going to play like actually inside the editor before you build it. So a very, very vital step. Not required, but you're going to learn so much about your own design when you bring it into the editor. So little situations like that, you'll be able to actually test. Can I jump over each one of these without hitting them? You can even place little cubes there, little objects to make that test even further. But if not, you do have some room down here. You can always just expand this safe out even further to make sure you have enough room. And then lastly, you set it in your own design, right? You get to the computer and it opens up a door. Not very exciting. Maybe there's something you can do to add a little bit more climax to the finish of the level, right? It launches a nuclear missile, or it explodes, a tank or some object outside, and it explodes a hole in the wall to allow you to proceed. Some other creative way to exit the level than just a door opening. So not terrible, not the end of the world. But you mentioned it yourself. Maybe there's something else you can do there to add a little bit more memorable experience at the very end of this level.
Awesome.
All right, yeah, so very, very well done. The layout is fantastic in terms of just using Google Draw. Right? I know it's not the most involved and complex tool, but still you can do a lot with it to communicate what you want to do. So very, very good stuff. This area out here is going to be a great opportunity when you get into a team scenario, and something you guys can think about with your transitions is right now the player is just walking into the building. So when you get into a team setting, this little area can be a good spot for your teammates mechanic, or starting to introduce or utilize any of the other mechanics from your teammates. So I like that you have this space here. When you get into Des 3 or you get into a team, think about using the space for some other type of gameplay that you can start to make your mechanics cohesive from one area to the next and utilize some of your teammates' areas. So definitely I like that you have a lot of space in here to transition from, right? You'll notice Roy's he has his player start down here, but this is the starting area, right? He could have a teammate attached from the east, from the west, or from the south. Any one of these directions will easily be able to attach. So try and come up with a plan like that that's adaptable, but still have a specific vision of your own area, your own transitions. All right, very, very good stuff. Thank you, Roy, for presenting. Let's give another round of applause. looks like awesome. Glad to see people are continuing to add their names to the list. So Pablo, you're going to be up next, and then Raymond, you're going to follow. So we're going to have Pablo will probably be our last one for the lecture portion, but from 1 to 2 p.m., if anyone wants to continue reviewing, we can do so. So Raymond, if you're available to come back at 1 p.m., you'll be up next. And I know Joshua, you wanted to present as well. I'll definitely be happy to go over your maps with you guys if you'd like that. All right, Pablo, you ready? All right, let me open this up.
Woo!
And if you want to use the pointer at all, feel free.
Okay. So, I mean, I haven't fixed mine completely, but I added like one thing that was missing, and that's like the interior of the warehouse, one of the warehouse, not all of them, the both of them. But let's start by how the player starts. So the player starts here, and it's supposed that the player is going to receive a call saying that one of those two ships contains something important. That's basically a electric generator. So he needs to search on one of those two ships, or well, both of them. The thing is, exactly like what I wanted to do was to make both ships to have like different mechanics to be learned. So basically, the player have to basically decide whether he wants to learn to do one mechanic or the other one. But after a while, I decided to actually change this to basically one ship where you learn both of them. And if you want to go to the other one, it will be a secondary path for the player to go. So basically, like before entering here to customs, you first need to go to one of those one of the two warehouse. I will prefer to make this one because this one, in difference to this one, the entrance is basically blocked. So you need to enter by the fire entrance on the back of the warehouse. So after that, after you get the key for this, can you move it to the right?
Sure.
So it's yeah. So it's like basically both warehouses are the same. Just that this warehouse doesn't have this part because this is like you cannot go to this part because this is like all destroyed and all. So it's like impossible to get into that. Here you have the second floor of that. Basically, is where the solution to the customs is going to be. And in here, it's basically like PCs and computers and mechanic stuff and all that. That's like, hey, this is where the solution is, like the key to the customs. So you need to get here and you need to get that key and go to customs. Now, can you move again to the left? Thank you. So after that, you get to customs. Oh well, yeah, right. I forgot to explain those things here, right here. Basically, what I wanted to do was the mechanics that I thought are actually the core mechanics. So basically, move and push. Yeah, move and push are basically the core mechanics of the grapnel. So I said like, okay, those are not the real core mechanics that I want to do. So I mean, now I need to change those core mechanics, to actually something else. And what I was thinking was actually on using the grapnel as a shield. So when you activate the grapnel, it basically deactivates the laser beam that goes from the turret and lets you walk freely without being able to die due to the turret firing at you. After that, well, yeah, after you learn how to defend yourself with the mechanic, you go to the customs, and on customs, there should be one turret that will try to, of course, kill you. But if you use your brain, at least a little bit, you're going to be able to defend yourself by using the grapnel as a shield. After that, you decide to go to one of those two ships. It doesn't really matter which one you choose because in both cases, it's basically the same. You learn both the two mechanics, and then you escape the ship, or you can go to the other one and try to salvage it and get some stuff and then escape. So basically, on inside the ships, you have two things to do. First, you need to disable all open all the doors, and after opening all the doors, you will have to go to the engine bay and on the engine bay there's going to be the engine block is going to be outside, like outside the socket for the engine of the ship. So you will have to actually move the whole engine block through the ship to the engine socket, and then you are going to be able to turn on the power to escape the ship. And not only that, it also opens the door that contains the object that the electric generator that you're searching for, and then you escape. That's it. And that's where the levels finish. And basically that's it.
All right. It's been nice. Anyone have any questions, comments about Pablo's map so far?
We got one right here.
Why not just incorporate like both ships instead of having like one path? Because I know in the class I'm taking right now, you have to at least hit 2 to 4 minutes. And I feel like if I only go through one path, I might be able to like choose your level out of the entire like.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was the main intent of the level, to have like one ship and only one ship to go. Well, no, two ships. But now I am doing what you're saying, that I will make those the entrance you see here. You see here that it's like one entrance, like the entrance, but not going back. It's like what I wanted to do now is to change one to be like the two will be basically you can go out and go in.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But after you finish one ship, you can go to one, and that will be basically you won't be able to go back after the second ship. So you just go and do like, let's say that you go and do ship A, you go back and you will be able to go inside this one, right? But you won't be able to go back from this one to the customs. You will have to jump out of the ship and get into, and that will finish the level.
So it's kind of like after I do one ship and I'm going to the second one, I'm guessing like it's gonna like fall down.
Yeah, it's going to fall down, or for some reason you will have to jump and you won't be able to come back.
Yeah,
that's the main.
So you have to complete those ships to complete your level?
Not necessarily, because this part, like the second ship that you choose, is going to be secondary path. But if you want to jump out of one of the ships, you can just jump out of the ship and it will be the end of the level.
So I believe he was saying, and I agree with him, make it required to go to both ships.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that also can work. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's that 2 optional endings. Just have like one ending, just so it just feels more like I probably missed something along the way versus, hey, I can just do this one thing and then get out.
Yeah, then it will be possible then to make, instead of ship A and ship B, it will be ship 1 and ship 2, and the ship it will be like basically an order. So it's going to be already planned out which one you're going to go first, and then which one you're going to go second, and having that second one to be the ending of the level at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, the biggest thing I definitely want to see is there should be one player path icon, or one player finish icon. You have 2 right now,
yeah.
And you want there to be one definitive finishing area, right? It doesn't have to be a specific location, but an overall area where you want to transition from. With there being 2, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to connect your areas.
Yeah, of course, that's I definitely will do that. Yeah, I can just delete ship A ending and just make it ship B ending, and that's it.
All right. Any other comments?
Yeah, I got a couple of things. So your scale, your warehouses, you see how you brought them to the side and then you
now I realize that they're way bigger. Like here.
Yeah,
like,
they need to be the exact same size as they're going to be in the world, right?
Yeah.
That way everything's at scale and you're not having to compensate while building.
Yeah, but then what I was thinking then was just to delete the card, because that's what basically gives the notion of the size. Because of course, like the player is going to be then like, first the card is going to be either too big or too small in order to fit this warehouse. So what I was thinking, just delete this one, and you will have basically the warehouse, but this is just basically like a zoom in of the warehouse instead of being.
Yeah.
Right. That's a zoom in, but when you're building it in Unity and you're trying to match what you've made over here, and you built it, and then you go to place it on the world where you have it shown, it's going to be bigger than what you planned for. Right?
Yeah.
So make sure those are the same size, the warehouse on the actual map and the break off of it.
Oh yeah, the little, okay.
Yeah, if this is the actual dimensions and the size of the warehouse, then just put that right here and then readjust your overall level, the layout of the level to compensate for that. You don't want it to be smaller here and then larger here. It should all be to scale. And then if you want to have, this is the main floor right on the map, and then if this is the second floor, this can be off to the side like you're breaking away from, but make sure it's the same scale and proportion.
Okay, so instead of like making this one, this whole thing bigger, why not make this one smaller? It's
sure, that'll work. It's as long as they're the same size.
Okay.
That's the important thing. You don't want to have any zoomed in areas, because if I were to build this inside Unity, what I would do is I would walk into, right when this triggers, I would just load a new scene with this. And that's not what we're doing for Scraps. You're building everything in one specific scene. So you want everything to scale to itself and to the other objects in the level.
All right. And actually plan out the architecture for your warehouses, customs building, and your ships.
Yeah.
As of right now, for what you probably planned for your ships, they are probably too small.
Mm-hmm.
I put the player icon right on there, and the player has that ship looks like it's 3 human links across, right? Mm-hmm. That's way too small to do anything on there, especially if I have to solve a puzzle and mess with your mechanics, it might not fit on there. So actually plan the architecture for it and where these puzzles, like where the player actually interacts with, what they interact with, and how big these things are. That way you can actually scale that ship up to where it needs to be.
Yeah,
right?
and at the end of the day, then I will just have to like make everything bigger, because this is like the ships are supposed to be like big.
Right.
Yeah, like
that's what I picture. I picture like a big, something
like
that. Right?
Like that, right? Yeah, like I've seen a whole level be just that itself. So if you want to readjust and make just one ship and the level takes place on there, that is enough space to come up with 2 to 4 minutes of gameplay. Right, but yeah, definitely keep that in mind. This player icon, that's the physical size of the player.
Okay.
So a few things that I'm just going to point out as some major requirements that you're missing, you want to pay attention to. Obviously the player path, we've talked about that. That's a vital requirement for the final. Make sure that's included. As you presented, you were talking about turrets a few times, but in your notes down here, you mentioned enemies. So if those are the...
That's the thing. Like, at first I was thinking of enemies when I wrote this.
Okay.
But then I decided everybody said to me, like, no, it's not turrets. It's not enemies. It should be turrets, because we're not going to make AI.
Yeah, no enemies have...
So, I mean, I tried to rewrite everything out, but I forgot, like, some stuff. But I know that when I say enemies, what I mean is turrets.
Okay, so yeah, just be careful with the words, because, after eliminating all the enemies, that seems like a very specific AI type of... So just be careful with those words that you're choosing. And then terrain, another thing that you want to make sure that you're including in your map, even if it's set, if this is like ocean or sea, maybe there's a bay or some type of land along the coast, and you can use that as your terrain. Also, it's really great at creating visual barriers. You don't want the player to be standing on the ship and then just see blue ocean forever, right? You want there to be a horizon line, or you want there to be something to break up the nothingness of the game engine. So think about having your main gameplay and then terrain surrounding that, even if it is out on the ocean or along a dock, right? Think about where this dock would exist and grab some reference. You could probably find some good images of just an overall dock layout, where here are the docks, here's a little building off to the side, like you're saying with the warehouse, and then here's the landmass along the edges. So keep that in mind when you're working on the map going forward.
Yeah, definitely. I will take that on mind. I was thinking actually make like this whole like a little coast, like with a just rocks. It's like
sure.
Because I mean normally like these docks are like they don't have anything to the sides.
Yeah, there's like a rock wall. Only. Yeah, a rock wall to help the sandbar form and things like that. Yeah, maybe out in the distance there is, and again, it can just be visual things. Maybe there's sands that's coming up through the water, and then a destroyed ship or a dilapidated ship that's sitting on the sandbar, and the sand itself is the terrain.
So,
can work.
I have another one question about this. Like you said we should have visual barrier to make the horizon or something like that in here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking what exactly just the horizon, the ocean going back, expanding, or just I don't know, terrain in this side, so we can I don't know, see landmass or something like an island or something. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because
Yeah, so
thinking about
where the gameplay takes place, and then surrounding that play space with visual borders of the level, and not making them feel so obvious, right? Other things you can include. I think
If that's the ocean, what the player can also see on top of the islands and everything. And I just thought maybe you had a peninsula or something with a lighthouse so you can see the light going through.
Yeah, that will
But if that's the ocean, when you view out, it might just be foggy.
Yeah, that could work too, right? And then it's a good thing too for when I'm talking about the horizon line. When the player looks out, you don't want to just see a flat edge, right? You want it to be, hills and mountains and things like this that breaks up that line into something a bit more interesting. So yeah, some other buoys or other objects, out in the water, and then terrain or rocks like this to make that play space feel contained.
Okay, definitely. Yeah. Of course, I can try to make to put buoys, and I was thinking making, since this is so, the distance between the ships and this thing and the end of the blue square, the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too distant. What I wanted to do was then set up another landmass on the other side of the thing. So it's
that works.
Yeah. So it's basically I don't know, a small canal. Well, not a small canal, a big canal where you can see the boats
coming in and out of. Yeah, good. That works. Yeah, so at least you just have a plan in place, so you have ideas where the boundaries will exist. Because again, when you get into a team setting, it might change, right? You might have one of your teammates might want to do a helicopter where they're going to pick them up from the ship and then they fly in a helicopter and drop them off in that area. You just want as much as that space detailed out as possible, so you have all your bases covered.
Yeah, of course. That makes more way more sense. Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and give Pablo another round of applause. Thank you. So thank you to everybody that presented. I know it's probably not the easiest thing to do. You might be a little bit nervous and jittery when doing it, but it's a good skill to develop as designers, right? You're presenting to each other as potential future teammates, so you want to get each other on board and be able to communicate your ideas to other people that you're working with. So let's go ahead and break